Hey, it's Carlton French. Welcome back to the Single Man Podcast. I am joined this Friday with my good friend, Eric Villy.
Yeah. I wish I could go back and change things, right? So I'm seeing now through my marriage the consequences of my actions in the past. I just hit a low point, praying for the first time in a long time of like, God, I know I really haven't followed you, and I know I really haven't prayed to you, and I don't really know much. I grew up learning, but I don't know much about you. But can you save me? I just want to be saved. Being relentless, fleeing from temptation. Don't find your confidence in what people say about you. Go see what God says about you. The closer you grow to Christ, the more sin that's going to be exposed. I remember I really felt guilty over was pornography. I was introduced to it when I was 12 years old, and sins left untouched lead to addiction, and then hurts left untouched lead to anger. One of my things was anger. There's anger that was built from my dad's hurt.
What was kind of your dating story like? And then, leading up to meeting your wife, how did you meet her? And what's it been like, being a married man?
My wife was the first one that I dated better. We didn't mess up physically. We were pure until we got married. You've probably heard people say this, but they don't kiss until they get married. And I did that.
What was it like when you started to confess? Like, did things get better or...
Challenge yourself constantly. You have to be a little bit patient.
The whole idea is you have to become content in singleness.
I'd be lying if I said I haven't fired off some Instagram DMs.
The word dating is not mentioned in the Bible.
I dedicated my life at Tomorrow World to Jesus.
Welcome to the Single Man Podcast, where we delve into candid conversations with Christian men about their journey to faith, advice for their younger selves, and navigating dating. With a heart to reach men from all walks of life, dive into real stories of redemption, growth, and the hope found in following Jesus. I'm your host, Carlton French, a 29-year-old single Christian, and I'm excited for you to listen to this week's episode. Let's jump into it. Hey, it's Carlton French. Welcome back to the Single Man Podcast. I am joined this Friday with my good friend, Eric Villy.
Yeah.
Villy, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well, excited.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. I am pumped to have you on. You have come all the way from the great state of Texas to be here today.
Shout out Texas pride.
So Villy literally lives in Austin, Texas right now, and flew in to come be on the podcast.
That's the only reason I flew in. That's exactly.
He's
You're right.
Here for work, and also just great friend of mine. And so, been a fan watching the podcast, and we've been talking about it. And I was just like, dude, you're here while I'm filming. You got to come on. And so I know you prayed about it. And just honored that you would come and share some of your story with single men that are listening. I know it's going to be really encouraging.
Thank you for having me on, man. I'm excited to be a part of this. And yeah, I watch all these guys that come in and share their stories. And so just excited to voice another story that the Lord has done work in, for sure.
Yeah.
So.
What's it been like? Because most of the people that everyone I've had on at this point has been living in Atlanta. You'll be the first person that hasn't lived in Atlanta that's come on. What's it been like? Has it been impactful listening in Texas?
Yeah. So Texas stories are always better than Atlanta stories.
Okay.
So it's going to be a little bit more.
So this will be the best episode then.
It'll be the best episode. This will probably hit about 1 million views. And so just Texas people in general support each other.
Right.
You know?
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. No, it's been really good to hear other guys' stories, for sure. I know you have single guys that come on, married guys, engaged guys, things like that. And so it's good to hear stories, different stories. I think stories are testimonies, right? Our testimonies are impactful in different ways. And I think it just reaches out to different people because everybody grows up differently, has different experiences. And so my story might not relate to someone, this and this side, but it will relate to this person as to where, Galbraith's story, relates to this other person, know? And so I think it's good to have multiple testimonies shared just to let people know that, hey, we are all sinners. Mm-hmm. We are all imperfect, and we all have something that's happened in our lives or that we've gone through.
Yeah.
Even even if you're a homeschooled kid, you don't do anything, right? And I'm not to pick on homeschool people, but if it's like a story that, hey, they never did anything wrong.
Yeah.
There's still something there that the Lord can use to bring people to him.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's awesome. Well, really appreciate you coming on, Billy. I, part of like my vision for the podcast is to have guys from different backgrounds and different stories coming on, and even, different locations. So super cool to have you come from Texas and share some perspective. So let me give a little intro on kind of how we met, and then a little intro on who you are so that everybody can get to know you a little bit. So
sounds good.
Billy and I met 2 years ago in Dallas, Texas, actually.
D-town.
It was kind of like my 1 year anniversary of becoming a believer.
Yep.
And I was like really impacted by the ministry of the porch here in Atlanta, living in Atlanta, trying to learn about faith and dating, really, like kind of what I'm trying to do here a little bit. And, found the porch through YouTube, and like every Tuesday night, I would look forward to watching the porch. And can't wait to see what the message is about tonight, and it's a YouTube channel if you don't know it now, for basically young adults in the city of Dallas, but really anybody can watch it through YouTube, which is really amazing. And so it really touched my life. And so when I heard that they had a conference, I was like, I'm gonna fly to Dallas and like go to the conference. And so I went, didn't know anybody, like went by myself. And I think it was the day after the conference, I was at the coffee shop at the church, and I don't remember how I think I just like came up and said hi or something. And
No, I came to say hi to you.
Oh, did you?
I do remember that.
Okay.
Because
I was like
remembered
alone
your
in the corner.
face from the conference. I remembered your face from the conference, and so y'all know I oversaw safety and security at Watermark, so I worked for Watermark.
Yeah.
And so Carlton, I remember his face, and I was kind of walking around and see who's all there, and I saw his face, and he's by himself, and I was like, see what he's up to.
Yeah.
See what
yeah.
if he's up to
okay.
no good.
Make sure I wasn't like plotting something again. Okay.
Yeah. Making sure you weren't second guessing, what happened that weekend or something. I don't know. You never know.
Yeah. Cool. So just kind of got to know each other, and I shared a little bit about my story, shared some of yours, and exchanged numbers, and we just kind of stayed in touch the last couple of years. I've been fortunate to come to Dallas a few times since for work, and have come to the porch. We've gotten dinner, so just been cool to stay in touch and just see how God can work and like build relationships, across state lines and across geographies. And I know that people are listening to the podcast all over the world, so that's really cool. And then also just kind of a little background on you, Billy, so everybody can get to know you personally. So you're 33 now, and you're married, got married at 30, and you're originally from a small town in Texas. And I think that's a unique story. I don't really know much about like small town Texas, being from Georgia. So I think that's going to be a cool perspective to share with people that maybe also have grown up in small towns. And then also you now work in security, and you still work in security. You worked in security at the church before, and now you're kind of running your own security company, which is awesome. And so just super grateful to have you on. Live in Austin, Texas now, and really enjoying it there, I know.
Yeah.
So anything I kind of left out you want people to know about you?
No, just to clarify, I lived in Dallas for like 8 years after college, and then last year I moved to Austin. And so that's where Austin comes in. But no, that's pretty much it. If you're a young adult and you're single, guys or girls, hey, the porch is a good place to go and watch on YouTube or go to. It's Watermark Church. But
if you live in Dallas,
I'm a big supporter of them. I love the porch, and that's where you'll hear my story, but that's a lot of my story is the porch made a big impact on my life for sure. So
we wouldn't have met had it not been for the porch. So
for sure.
Awesome. So people can get to know you a little bit more, Billy. What's kind of been a high, a low this last week, so people can kind of understand what you're walking in here with.
So the high-low story or question. There's a friend of ours in Austin that we're close to that she loves, She loves that question.
Yeah.
And so we always have to ask it, or we always ask it. But anyways, good high, or I'll start with low. I like lows first. Low this week is just work. Can become a lot sometimes, and I've been working a lot lately, and it's just been kind of wearing me down a little bit. But my wife is a good supporter, and she for sure energizes me a lot, and so having her around has been good and helpful. And so that's a low, is just work has been very crazy, very busy. I'm here for work right now.
Literally, like you have to fly, work trip.
Yeah. So just so y'all know, too, backstory, I'm in law enforcement. And so I'm a full-time law enforcement officer. I also have a company on the side as a security. And so this week, I flew in for a conference. It's just been a lot of late nights.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And you got in just a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And I got to pick you up at the airport.
Yeah.
And got to come to church, which was really cool.
Yeah. So one of the highs, going to the highs. My highs is I signed this contract, and this is a huge thing for us, the company, and including that highs is I have a lot of friends in Atlanta, and and one of them is being Carlton, and so first person reached out to just let him know I'm coming, and he was like, dude, let's do this. Come to Passion Church, and so I was like, I've always wanted to go to Passion Church and try it out. Let's go.
Yeah. What was the experience like at Passion, being in Atlanta here? We went to the Varsity for lunch afterward.
Yeah.
How was that?
This last Sunday, so we went to Passion. It was great. I mean, it was great. Was that the main campus? Is that the main campus?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So it was great. It was a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be, for sure.
Yeah.
But everybody's so, they treat you like they know you. And it was just very personal, I guess, in a way, right?
Yeah.
And so even to the details of a lady, like when we go sit down in service, a lady comes by and goes through your aisle.
Yeah.
And she's trying to see which seats are available and stuff like that. But she also goes to each person and says, "Hey, how you doing? Well, where are you from?" Things like that.
Yeah.
And so
it's
a very personal touch. I'm like, wow, the details, these people really serve.
Yeah.
And so anyways, loved it. I love how they celebrated the people, the people that are serving. And so that was good. And then varsities, Carlton said everybody knows about varsities. That's a tourist place to go. And I've heard of varsities, and it was great. I love their onion rings. Their onion rings are great.
Yeah.
And the peach or the orange.
The orange freeze blast thing. Yeah.
That was good.
The Varsity in Midtown Atlanta, we went there. It was
ATL shout out.
It was great. So awesome, Billy. Well, thanks so much for coming. I'm glad you're here, and we'll love to jump into your story. I know there's a lot there, so would love for you to just share kind of about your upbringing, small town Texas, and then at what point did you really come to know who Jesus was?
Yeah, so I was telling Carlton, and Carlton knows my story, full story, but my story my testimony is can be broken up in many different segments, right?
Yeah.
You can create 5 sermons off of this story, this testimony, and the reason is because I've made a lot of stupid decisions and mistakes, and I've hurt a lot of people in my past, and so because of that, there's just many parts to the story. So I'll try to share the general overview. Yeah. And I know we'll probably go into details, more things. And so
what you think would resonate well with single men.
With single men.
That are listening,
Yeah, and so we'll go from there. But if you ever want to hear the full story, hey, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to share the whole in-depth story for sure.
Yeah, I'll put your Instagram in the description or something.
Yeah, that's good. So anyways, grew up in a small town called Paradise, Texas. And Paradise, Texas it sounds like paradise, but it's not paradise. But shout out to Paradise, Texas. Grew up there. It's a town with, we had 68 people in our class, graduated high school with. And so that tells you how small it is.
Yeah, everybody knows everybody kind of.
Everybody knows everybody. Mm-hmm. And so growing up, I went to a church, a Pentecostal church, and in that church. You know, my mom was the one that kept us going to that church, and my dad was not really involved in church. It was just my mom. And so growing up, it was just my mom taking us there every Sunday, Wednesday, was a part of everything. And through that, just in that church itself, I'm not going to say all Pentecostal, right? In that church itself, it was very fear-based, kind of growing up in that, like kind of fear-based
what is
religion.
Pentecostal for people that maybe don't know what that even is?
Yeah, so it's just a denomination so there's non-denominational, Pentecostal, Baptist, Southern Baptist, things like that. And so Pentecostal was more, led more into the Old Testament. It was more Old Testament led, very charismatic, very into the gifts of the Spirit, like speaking in tongues, prophesying, reading dreams, things like that. So it was led that way. And so a lot of our church was, like I said, it was very fear-based, as in like, I remember growing up so vividly, and my mom and I have had great conversations through this and about this, just growing up always hearing, hey, if you drink, or hey, if you do drugs, hey, if you cuss, if you get a tattoo, you're going to hell.
Wow.
You're going to hell. And then I remember when I first got so I do have a tattoo. It's just Fear Not For I Am. But I remember getting this, and my mom cried, and my mom literally cried, and she says, you're writing, you're literally writing on yourself, like that's what the devil was going to do. Like that's what the devil does, is write on themselves, and mark. It's like the mark of the beast,
Wow.
And so that's how much she was in it, just in that mindset of like, we have to follow this, and if you don't, you're done, And so that puts a lot of fear in me of like messing up. And then once you feel like you messed up, then it's like, all right, I'm done. Like, I'm not gonna.
It's like a one-time.
Why do I try to go back? Yeah,
right. Yeah.
Why do I try to be a believer that I'm not good enough? I've already messed up. So I remember my first thing that I remember I really felt guilty over was pornography. I was introduced to it when I was 12 years old, and that led to an addiction. Starting at 12 years old, doing it every day because it was a curiosity thing. Led to an addiction, led to, desiring more in that area. And so once you get into high school, then it's like you desire relationships, inappropriate relationships, and which it led to that. And then going into college, now being free from mom, from church, not being forced to do it. My first semester of freshman year, I went to a school in Fort Worth, a little private school, but it was a Texas Wesleyan University. But I went there and just was surrounded by now people that are wanting to party, wanting to do drugs, wanting to do alcohol, drink alcohol, things like that, inappropriate relationships. And so got it consumed by that, into that. And just, I remember several times of just getting high and just hating my life in that moment. Just not having any stability, it's just not being as fun anymore, right? And so I remember in October of 2009, I just hit a low point.
How old were you at that point?
I was 18. Yeah, I was 18.
Okay.
And so I just hit a low point, and I remember just curling up in a ball in the shower and just praying for the first time in a long time of like, God, I know I really haven't followed you, and I know I really haven't prayed to you, and I don't really know much. I know what I grew up learning, but I don't know much about you. But can you save me? I just want to be saved. And so that immediately started I had a friend that was in that school. There was one friend that went to church, and I remember talking to him the next day, and he was like, hey, come to church with me. It was a Wednesday night. Came to church, went to that church. They did a leaders prayer in the morning. He was one of the leaders, and he's like, "Hey, come to the prayer. We're praying up front." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah.
So I went and prayed, and then this song came while they're praying. The song came over the radio or the speakers, and I never heard it before. It was the first time, but it's "Come to My Rescue." Came to my rescue. I won't sing it, but yeah,
I need you, Jesus. That one.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So anyways, that song came over, and I just remember just crying and like hearing he's come to my rescue and he's come to save me. And so I remember just crying. So anyways, went through that and kind of rededicated my life. And then I knew I needed to leave that college. So I transferred to another college, and through that transferring, I rededicated my life, and I really wanted to pursue Jesus, but I really didn't know how to.
Yeah.
But I just knew I needed to surround myself with good people. And I knew everything needed to change on the outside, right? And so I did change everything on the outside. I didn't party anymore. I didn't drink anymore. But the only thing that really still stayed with me was addiction to pornography.
Yeah.
And that's something I didn't share with anybody because I was still that. In that time, you didn't share that. Like
Right.
that's a horrible, icky thing to share. So
Yeah.
I brought it with me.
You probably
And-
thought you were like alone in it.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Didn't think any other Christians would be doing it, right?
Right.
Because no one shares that stuff. Even
Right.
on stage in that time, and we started going to Baptist church. And in Baptist church, you ain't going to share that
Yeah.
on stage. And so I never heard anybody else share it. So it was just like a hidden thing. I kept it secret.
Right.
And after a year, again, my addiction just grew and got into inappropriate relationships with girls there at college. And then fast forward, my parents get divorced my junior year. And that created, my dad just basically kind of abandoned us and like left. Let's just say I didn't talk to him for the next like 6 or 7 years.
Wow.
And it was a moment that I didn't realize how much I stuffed in emotionally, right? I emotionally tried to separate myself and remove myself from that, but there's so much anger coming out, and I was so oblivious to it.
Yeah.
I was in a relationship at that time, and I became physically and verbally abusive with this girl. And for 2 years I did that. And this is right after my parents' divorce. And the whole time I'm thinking it's just because she's making me mad or because I'm mad about something, but not realizing how much my dad's separation or abandonment
Yeah.
was hurting me. And so, for 2 years I did that with this girlfriend, and it was just a bad season of my life, right after college, right out of college, things like that. And so one of my friends, good friends, Tyler Heidelberg, he started going to the porch. Him and his brother, Kyle Heidelberg, they're my bestest friends.
Yeah.
They went to the porch. And so they invited me one time, and I went and just was like, dude, I need to be a part of this. So once again, how I transferred from Texas Wesleyan to Howard Payne with this, okay, I'm going to change everything again. Like, let's change. I moved to Dallas with that same mindset of like, I'm changing everything. I'm not going to be abusive anymore. And I'm not going to do this inappropriate stuff anymore. Right. And I did that. But once again, everything on the inside that people don't know about still came along, tagged along. Right. And so going into Watermark, I got into, I was in Watermark for like 4 years before, or 2 years. Yeah, it was 2 years. In 2017, after having many inappropriate relationships again, and actually dating a girl at that time.
Yeah.
I was cheating on her with other women. And then, I remember in December of 2017, I again hit this low point of like, no one knows who I am. No one, like my closest friends don't know what's really going on. My girlfriend at that time doesn't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I'm also a leader at the
church.
porch stuff.
Yeah.
Like porch, church. I was a leader. I was leading groups and stuff. And
You're like leading other people.
yes.
Yeah.
And I'm over here behind closed doors, doing things that are hurting me, hurting other people.
Yeah.
And me not even knowing, just so oblivious and so numb to it. And so hit a low point, and I just remember that feeling of like I knew that this whole time I was holding stuff in, even from that time from switching over my freshman year. I knew this whole time that it was going to take me having to confess and be vulnerable and trust the Lord for me to be free from these things, right? And I knew that. And so at that point, I was in such a low spot and so low place in my life that I was like, I don't care. I want freedom. Like, God, I want this. Like, I want to be free from this. I want to be done running, hiding, whatever it is. Like, I want to be done with this. And so, God, if that means me losing everything, so be it, right? So be it. And so the next day, literally called my girlfriend. Hey, I got to share some things with you. Confessed to her. Of course, heartbroken, shocked, confused. Led to multiple conversations with my friends, my mentor. I had a mentor at that time that was mentor for like the 2 years, right?
Yeah.
And he didn't know any of that stuff.
Wow.
And I was supposed to be confessing to him, sharing things with him.
Right.
He didn't know any of that stuff. So even him, but it was kind of cool because he was like, I knew there's something there, but I was always praying that God would reveal it at some point in your life for you. I'm not going to force you to do it, but I wanted you to get to that point where you knew something's going. But that's a different story. But anyways, so got to the point of just confessing, and I started a program called Regeneration, which is at Watermark. It's called Regen, and it's a discipleship program, recovery program, and just went all in. Was not perfect. Even through that program of 1 year program, I still messed up a lot, and so really it took years for me to get up to a place where I feel I was feeling closer to God. I was really healing, and I was really continuously and daily confessing, because the confessing part is the hardest part. In confessing and growing. So that's a lot of it. There's still more, but that we'll share that part. We could be here all day.
Well, thank you for sharing and being vulnerable with that part. I think that's gonna help a lot of guys that maybe they're already in church and they're dealing with stuff and they're leaders and they don't know, like, I thought when I get to church that everything's going to be okay, and I'm still struggling with stuff. And like, that was part of your story. And also someone feeling like too dirty to even go to a church, like, also part of your story. I think that's really powerful. And so, I guess, what was it like when you started to confess? Like, did things get better, or like, what was it about this last time that you really hit the low point? Because it sounds like there was multiple low points. Like, why? Maybe so like other guys could maybe just hit the low point one time, right? Like, what worked well that last time that would help other guys now?
Yeah, and I think this was confession was a new thing. When I went to Howard Payne, that wasn't really talked about, like daily confessing, community, things like that. I think it was just all about, changing your playground, changing your playmates kind of thing, what JP says. But Watermark was really clear about, hey, what does healing look like? James 5:16 says, confess to one another and pray for one another so that you may be healed. Right? And so that's like the verse for Regen is that. And I just took that, and I knew that in order for me to be healed completely, I had to confess everything. So even whenever I was going through Regen and I would mess up, I would go to the next meeting and I would be like, I can't share what I just did. Because then my biggest fear was that they would think that I wasn't changing, or I'm not trying, or anything. Like, your reputation is a big thing. For guys, reputation is a big thing. Pride is a big thing. Like, you can't share with your bro that you just messed up again. Like, if you mess up every day, like, you can't share that. Like, that's just, then they're going to think badly of you, or they're going to give up on you, or you're going to lose your friends. And I'm like, I'll just tell you this, from guy to guy, the biggest deception, the biggest lie you'll ever believe is that someone's not going to love you because of something you did, right? Like, if, like, your brother here, like, if he's the one I'm going to confess things, like, my biggest lie in my mind, in my head, is that he's not going to love me, I'm going to be rejected, or I'm not going to be cared for, or they're going to see me differently, right? See me differently. And I'm telling you right now, that's the biggest lie you can believe. And that's so hard to get out of your head. That's so hard. I'm not going to downplay it and say that just go and confess. Just go share. It's easy. You know, it's hard. It is hard to confess things because we're prideful. We're sinful. I mean, we know we're going to mess up. Like there's guys that can confess, but they already know in their mind, they already made up in their mind that they're going to give in to pornography that night. You know, like they can confess. They can be like, "Hey guys, I want to confess this and let y'all know that I gave him pornography last night."
Yeah.
And in their mind, they've already made it up that when they get home, there's already a video they're going to watch. And I'm like, and that's just real. That's just being real with everybody. Like you as a guy know where you're at. You know what you're feeling. Dude, the only way you're going to find freedom from pornography, from addictions like that, is by being relentless, fleeing from temptation. And so that means like you confess that extra thought too. You say, yeah, I gave into pornography last night, and guys, I'm thinking about it tonight. I'm thinking about it tonight too. To be honest, like I'm thinking about a certain video. Be honest about what video. Be honest about what you're thinking about. Like what's getting you there. Like what's tempting you. Like be brutally honest. People don't want to share. Well, I just looked at pornography last night, and guys are just so scared to ask. Like, okay, tell me what you looked at. Tell me what you did. Tell me like how many times you gave into masturbation, how many times you gave into pornography. Like tell me the details, because I want you to hear for yourself how dirty, how sinful, how disgusting that is. So you can see for yourself of like, that's not the route I want to take anymore. Like I want that to always remind me the next time I'm tempted of like, man, remember that last time I talked about it? Why when I talk about it, it's disgusting and it's just icky. But when I'm doing it, I'm fine and I'm numb to it, right? Why? And so why not confess it, share the details with someone, and then continuously do that so that you can see for yourself of how it's not good for you. Like it's not good for you. Because I think the mess up is that when we don't share that, we don't see what's going on. We just see it as, well, it's just a girl on a screen. We're not hurting anybody. Or it's just me. Like, I'm not hurting anybody.
Right.
But, I mean, I'll tell you from my marriage, like, that's part of my story, too, of, like, my story is I never saw the consequences of my sin for pornography. And in reality, and in a sense, I didn't see my consequences for my sexual addiction as well. Like, I didn't see the consequences right away, right? And unfortunately, man, one of the hardest things is that I have to now, as a married person, see and feel those consequences. That's the hard part of, like, I wish I could go back and change things, right? But thankfully, man, I have a God that loves me, cares for me, and has forgiven me. And yes, I'm seeing now through my marriage the consequences of my actions in the past. Even though then in 2009, I didn't know that in 2024, I would still feel the consequences of this action. And so, man, it's hard. Honestly, it's hard to see that now, in marriage. But yeah, like I said, there's so many segments to my story, but that's one of them, right? And so, anyways.
Well, I would just like commend you for speaking so boldly about it. I think it's just powerful that you can really see when someone's gotten through something with how much passion and like vulnerability they're willing to speak about it. And it just is a testament to what God's done in your life and how you're at the point where you want to expose Satan for what he's trying to do with a generation of single men. I think, to be honest, like the more guys I talk to, like you realize, like with all the guys I talked to at Watermark that I got to just grow a relationship with, I feel like 95% of guys struggle with pornography. And I feel like only like, a handful will confess it and actually share it. Right. And it's still, I think it's grown a lot in our churches. Like I think in our churches, churches have gotten better about bringing that out and exposing it. Right. But I still think there's an ickiness or a uncomfortableness to confessing that or sharing that. And I could tell you 95% of the people watching this video are struggling with that and
showing pornography addiction.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, I think that does, guys don't understand how much of an impact that has on the way you view women, on the way you care for women, on the way you love women. And honestly, you don't understand how much of an impact it's going to have on your marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the single guys.
That's one thing that, I mean, for me, as someone that was in that lifestyle of pornography for years, and when I became a Christian, or like when I decided to follow Jesus, I knew I was gonna have to give that up, you know? Like I knew I was gonna have to start confessing this. And that was my biggest fear as well. Was like, nobody knows that I'm the only one that's doing this. Like I'm all alone. And like having to sit down with friends of mine and family members and tell them like, here's what I've been dealing with and I don't want to do this anymore. And just like having everybody embrace me through that. I don't know. It was just like, you feel free when you start actually speaking and like confessing and you see that people love you and you're not alone in it. So that's, I think, so powerful about this podcast and like the platform for you to come on and even share is just like, some guys don't have any friends. Some guys don't have any community and they think that they're all alone and they're not going to go to a church. They're not going to go, sit in watch a sermon online, but maybe somehow this podcast will come up on their feed or a friend will send it to them and they'll give it a shot and listen and it'll resonate. So I think that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, no. And I think I'd share, people always share, well, confess, and things like that. We can share this stuff too, but I think there's some for sure steps to take, right? In healing from pornography, because it's not easy. Yeah. I'm literally mentoring one of my friends right now and through it. And I mean, I feel like it's consistent every 2 weeks, right? He gives into it. And so I say this, like, there in scripture, it talks about how we have to flee temptation, like run, like relentlessly. You are running away from temptation.
Put to death.
Yes. Put it to death. Right. And so I think the part that guys struggle with is that part. The fleeing, because I think they're not willing to switch phones. They're not willing to put locks on their phones. They make an excuse like work. Well, I need it for work and I need this. If you were really, really wanting to find freedom from it, then you will find every possible way to get rid of it. Right. So it took me having to put a lock on everything, have no access to anything internet. I even got off social media for a year. Right. Yeah. And that's so hard for people now, to get off of that stuff. And so I'll tell you this, like, it's one of the most rewarding feelings to be free from something like that. It's one of the most rewarding feelings. I was addicted for like 15 years. And so knowing that, like, 15 years, something like that. And so you think about trying, like, and some of you guys might be struggling, that long or longer or whatever it is, right? Or a couple years. Yeah. Like, you think you're going to change, like, get an addiction out of you right away, you're mistaken. It's not going to happen in a month. It's not going to happen in a couple months. It's going to take a while. And so you have to be relentless with it and pursue freedom. And that means you're going to get tired of confessing. You think your friends are going to be tired of you confessing. They might get tired of you confessing every day. But guys, that is the work you have to put in. Like, when we go work out, we have to discipline ourselves to go work out and get in shape, right? And so same thing with this, like, you have to discipline yourself, like, and pursue freedom. Like, you have to pursue it. Yeah. And that's the steps. You have to take steps to do that. You can't just, I'm going to pray, or God, and I see guys get mad at God because they're not getting rid of, like, God, I'm praying. God, I'm a
miraculous deliverer.
Yeah. Like, why am I not feeling like I'm praying to you to take me away from this? And then I ask those guys, well, how are you accessing it? Through my computer. Have you put any locks on it? No. Why? Because I just want to be able, it doesn't let me search like other certain things, and it annoys me. And it's like, nah, bro, don't be mad at God. Like, you are causing yourself to go into that. Like Like Holy Spirit's working in you, but you're ignoring it.
Yeah.
How many times are you tempted into giving into it, but you hear the Holy Spirit saying, don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. But then you ignore it and you go give into it.
Yeah.
So don't get mad at God. He's trying to help you and guide you through it, but we're being ignorant of it, or we're just being numb to it.
Yeah.
Growing numb to it. And so I'd say there's steps to take in that. So
that's good. Let's say you could go back and talk to like your younger self when you were high school, college, kind of like trying to figure things out. Like you said, you're paying for kind of the actions then, now even. What if you could somehow go back and talk to younger Billy? What would you tell him to try to avoid some of these consequences you're facing now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So first of all, without being able to change the church that I go to with just what I've been given.
Yeah.
I did have an opportunity, and there's one of my closest friends in high school that was a strong believer and didn't go to the parties, didn't do anything, like really was a believer. Everybody knew he was a believer, so they weren't invited to parties because of that.
Yeah.
And but I cared so much about my reputation, about people's perspective of me, about my popularity. In a small town, popularity is a big deal. If you're popular, you can get away with anything.
Yeah.
And I mean, that was my popularity goal, was just to be known by everybody. A lot of that was I cared about my image, like what my image was to everybody else, right? And so I think something that I would go back to is I think I would, for sure, hope that I could tell myself, hey, don't find your confidence in what people say about you. Like, look at what God says about you. Your confidence doesn't have to be built on if your confidence is built on what people say, you're going to be let down. You're always going to be let down. If your confidence is built on what your boss says, about what your parents say, about what your coaches say, like, you're going to be brought down at some point, and you're going to be hurt at some point.
Yeah.
Like, go see what God says about you, and find out, pursue it, of what he sees in you and what he thinks about you, because then you will find your confidence, and you will find your that you don't care about what other people's opinions are of you, or what others' thoughts are of you. Like, you're going to feel secure because of that relationship with God.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of the stuff that I went into was because it was caused by that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
So,
wow. Thanks for sharing. I hope that helps single men listening right now.
Yeah.
What do you
I feel like a lot.
What's that?
I feel like that was a lot.
Yeah. It's a lot. But it's gonna help. I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good.
What do you think transitioning into dating? I know you've touched on it a little bit kind of throughout your story. What was kind of your dating story like, and then leading up to meeting your wife? Kind of how did you meet her, and what's it been like being a married man?
Yeah. Like I said, there's so many different categories with my story, but I did not date well, that's for sure. I think my wife was the first one that I dated better, right? Okay. I wasn't perfect, but I dated better. We didn't mess up. This is a good thing. When something we celebrate is we didn't mess up physically, in any sexual way. We were pure until we got married.
Okay.
I think the biggest reason for that was because I knew where I was at, and could be for single guys. When you've probably heard people say this, but they don't kiss until they get married, and I did that, and it was hard. My wife understood, and it took her a little bit to be okay with that, but she was okay with that. But
the two of you didn't kiss until you were married?
Until we were married.
Wow.
We kissed on our engagement night, right?
Okay.
And then the ways we messed up was there's times where we did kiss before that, but whenever there was a time where we would kiss, and then I knew that I was about to mess up. And so after that moment, we had a conversation. I was like, I don't want to kiss until we get married, because I know what it does. Yeah, what it does to me.
Yep.
And so what it prepares me for.
Yep.
And so we didn't kiss until we got married. After we got engaged, we kissed that night, and we made out. She took full advantage of it, and then we didn't kiss again. I gave her 24 hours. Like, we can kiss for 24 hours, but that's it.
Yeah, yeah.
And so she took advantage of that. It was fun. We didn't mess up, but we kissed,
Right.
And then we waited till our marriage day.
Okay.
And we kissed again. But
Wow.
in dating, I'd say this. Like I said in this whole thing, like, I never saw my consequences of my actions, of all the hurts I've caused, until I started growing closer to Christ. And it wasn't like it was consequence every time. I'm not going to call it consequence every time. Like, it's not always consequence. It's just things, habits, or ways that I handle things. Like, that's what kind of was brought out during my, like, me walking closer to Christ, and also dating and stuff. And so being more seriously dating, right?
Yeah.
And so I would say this, like, the closer you grow to Christ, the more sin that's going to be exposed, right?
Yeah.
And so the closer you grow to Christ, the more sin that's going to be exposed. And so while I've been trying to grow closer to Christ, there's been more and more things that have came out, like, oh man, I did not know I dealt with that, or I'd had this. So one of my things was anger. Like I said, there's anger that was built from my dad's hurts, my own father's hurts. And so let's just say we didn't talk, 6 or 7 years. Well, through Region, we made amends. And I reached out to him. We made amends. We talked for the first time. It was awesome. It was cool. And so I thought I was good. I thought I was fine. I thought my anger was down. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And so now I'm like, now I can start dating, right? I feel like I made my amends with all my people I've hurt and things like that. And so I was like, okay, I'm good. So seriously started dating. And since, from Region to when we dated, which was 2020, so 2017, 2020, I never was challenged in that area of, like, anger or someone upsetting me or something happening out of my control.
Yeah.
And so I'll say this, pornography was my coping mechanism. And I'll tell that to anybody, pornography is just a symptom of something else going on. And so also that's another step of, like, hey, figure out why you're using this to cope, and what symptom, like, this is just symptoms. So what is the deeper root behind your pornography addiction? And one was my lack of feeling loved or cared for by my parents. And so one was my dad, basically my dad, right? And oh man, that still chokes me up too. But I always wanted my dad's love, and me feeling abandoned by my dad was hard. And even, like, you could see, like, it still hurts.
Right. Right.
And so a lot of anger, I mean, you could just imagine how much anger is just built up in me. And so when the closest person to me, when I feel like they're about to abandon me, or something's getting out of control, like out of my control, I immediately lose my control, and I immediately get angry, like rage anger. So like I said, part of my story is physical abuse of a girl in that time, or right when I graduated college, and so I didn't do that again. I always promised after that relationship, when I moved to Watermark, never doing this again, never touching a girl again, never doing that, right? Yeah. So I started dating my wife, and I, like, when we've had our first argument, that was a big argument, I just grabbed her. I didn't hit her, but I grabbed her. And that was the first time I put my hands on a girl again. Yeah. And I remember just being like, I remember she left right after that. I let her go because it caught me off guard. Like, I just grabbed her, and I was like,
it was like a reflex or something.
Yeah,
almost.
it was. It was like, because I was trying to control her. Yeah. And I felt like I was losing control of her. So my way to gain control again, grab you and put you, like, tell you, hey, I'm in control here. And so, and that's my anger coming out. And so anyways, broke off. She left, and we came back, whatever. So we talked through it, and I just realized that was the first time that's happened since 2013, 14.
That was when you were married, this happened? Or
No, we were dating. We were dating. And so that really brought up a lot of questions, even for our marriage counselors. And brought up a lot of questions of, like, hey, is he really changed? Is he really going to, and brought up questions myself. Am I really changed? Am I really, like, am I really drawing closer to Christ? And, like, I even, like, started believing the lies of, like, oh, maybe your relationship with Christ is fake. You know, maybe this is not real. And so, you know, long story short, I don't want to keep going so long on it, but in our relationship, like even when I was working at Watermark, there's times where we would get angry. I would get angry again, like angry, and so I would grab her leg or I would grab her hand or something, and like to me that's crossing a line, right? To all of us, that's crossing a line. You don't put your hands on a girl, and so there's one last instance, and it was our honeymoon, actually, or not honeymoon, sorry, anniversary trip, and it was that time where I once again grabbed her leg, and I immediately was like, "What the heck am I doing? Like, why am I doing?" So I immediately called my community group and it was just like, "Guys, I messed up. Like, I did this again, and I need help. Obviously, I need help. This is just signs that I need help." And that started a whole thing. You know, of conversations, of healing and things. And it wasn't easy. I mean, my wife and I went through a hardship in that time of like, should we call it? Should we call her? We're married now. So we're like, should we call it? Should she leave? Like, I'm grabbing her, all these things. And so, all that to say, like, there's a lot of things that I had to, process and figure out and really like examine, like, hey, where's this coming from? So through counseling and through mentors, like I was able to really go back to the root of it. And it came back to my dad. So right now, like if you would ask me 2 years ago why that stuff happens, I still would have been like, I'm just angry. I just feel like I'm just angry because someone made me mad, right? Or like there's just something, I just feel like things out of control. I didn't know why this was like where all this is rooted from, right? And so one of the things, words or things that I go by is like, or I've heard that was really impactful for me was sins left untouched lead to addiction, and then hurts left untouched lead to anger. And so those are two phrases that I'm like, dude, that's really impactful. One for the sexual addiction and one for my anger was
Can you say it again? What was it again?
So sins left untouched lead to addiction.
Okay.
So that's the part of it. There's a deeper root, or there's something going on in our lives that's causing us to an addiction, pornography addiction, or things like that, or any kind of addiction, right?
Yeah.
Eating, whatever it is. And then hurts left untouched lead to anger.
Interesting. Okay.
And so my hurt to my dad, or my hurt from my dad, that I thought making amends was enough, I never processed it. I never sat down with someone and talked to them about how that hurt, why that hurt, things like that. I hate emotions.
Yeah.
As a guy, I hate emotions. So
right. Most guys are. Yeah. We're not emotional.
We're not emotional people. So like when my counselor, she had a list of emotions like happy, mad, angry, sad, whatever. And she was like, which one, how many on that list are good feelings, good emotions? And I was like, only the happy, happy and glad, I think it was. She's like, well, how about all of them? And I was like, no, that's not true. Angry's not a good one. Mad's not a good one. Like upset, sad.
Yeah.
How's that a good one? She's like, no, it's good emotions. Like emotions aren't the bad part. Like that's not the bad.
Action.
It's the action behind it, right? And so she was like, all those emotions are a check engine light. So it's a check engine light. So if you react in anger, that's a check engine light. Like what do you do when your car has a check engine light? You go to the mechanic and figure out what's causing that check engine light. Because it doesn't tell you, there's a valve out on your car, on your engine, your engine needs to be fixed, whatever.
Right.
You don't know that until you go get it evaluated. So with anger or sadness or reactions to that, right?
Yeah.
Our reaction to an emotion, our emotional reaction, that's a check engine light that you need to go and see, hey, what's causing that? So when I get really sad when someone yells at me, like what's causing that? Like sadness, is it because I really value that person's opinion, or is it because I what their perspective of me is really like I need it to be good, or like when my boss gets mad at me, am I caring more about how he sees me, or am I caring more about how I need to be a better follower of Christ and lead better and work or whatever, what's more important, God's perspective of me or people's perspective of me?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that anger that I was reacting with, like that rage, that was just a check engine light of something deeper rooted.
Yeah.
And so going through the healing process about, with my dad's stuff.
What did that look like?
So
counseling
through counseling and through many conversations and really just processing that hurt, in what, like how that hurt me. Like I said earlier, like the why, the how, things like that. So that's what kind of helped me walk through the process of healing. And, which, like I said, now I can say this, like, when my wife and I went through that hardship, I lost a lot. Like I lost a job. I lost friends. My community group kind of fell apart, things like that. And so I felt like I had no one in that moment. And so there's a scripture that really helped me through this.
Yeah.
And it's Psalms 34. So Psalms 34. Here we go.
What verse is it?
Psalms 34, verse 6. So this poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and saved him out of all of his troubles. This Psalms 34, we went through it, and my mentor and I and a lot of the people I was going through hardship with, right?
Yeah.
And hearing that, I was like, this poor man cried, and the Lord heard him and the Lord saved him out of all of his troubles. Like, I had to understand that when I lost everything, I'm now a poor man. Like, I felt like I really did lose my dream job. I lost friends. Like, felt like a lot of things whenever I had that last encounter with my wife, the last thing with her of just crossing that line. And so I was in a rough spot, and I just felt stripped away from everything. Right. And so through that time, like, I really had to figure out where my foundation in Christ was founded in. Like, was it on sinking sand or was it on firm, ground? And it was tested. Like, this is, 3 years after regeneration, really feeling like I've let go of things and healing. Right. And
was it on Jesus or was it on your friends? Was
it
on your job?
Or was it on the church or whatever? And so I really, whenever it's all stripped away, man, I had to, like, it was a decision of like, well, is this when life's over, or is this when I really cling to Jesus? And so, man, looking back now, I can say now, so this was like a year and a half ago now, but like I had a moment this June, my birthday, where because my last year's birthday was not the best one, right? When I was still going through a hardship with my wife and I, but and everything. And so, all I'd say, like, this last year, I looked back and just I was able to, like, just look back at how much God answered this prayer. And I didn't realize it was because of how poor I was. Like, I was poor. I didn't have all the things I wanted. The things that I thought were good, that I wanted, that I desired, like, were stripped away, right? And I was a poor man.
Yeah.
And I was crying out. I was literally crying out. And so, through processing my dad's hurts, through talking to counselors, through talking to mentor, and then through the love and patience of my wife, who cared for me so well in that time, in that season, and stayed patient and loved me. And she quoted a verse for me in 1 Peter.
Yeah.
And
1 Peter 3.
1 Peter 3. In 1 Peter 3, and it basically talks about how the silence of a woman, like, in the prayer. I don't want to butcher it, but
Yeah, pull it up. Yeah.
pull it up. I'm going to pull it up, but
Get the word out.
actually I forgot it on my phone. Let's see. Okay, likewise, this is 1 Peter 3, verse 1. Likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, when they see your respectful and pure conduct. And so my wife, like, lived that out. She didn't try to preach to me. She didn't try to tell me what's true and what I'm doing wrong or anything like that. She was just patient and quiet and praying without me knowing. And so for this past year and a half, like, it's just been a healing season for sure. But man, I have been able to see like I've been able to grow a love for my wife that like I know only God can do, and just an appreciation for her. And man, I found me a good wife. I mean, I found me a Proverbs 31 wife, and can't tell you how important that is in seasons like this when we screw up or we do things that we didn't know we're still struggling with, right, in marriage. And so, man, I found my bride, and my bride has been my best teammate in the world. And so,
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, all that to say, like, hey, when you're single, like, look at all the emotions you deal with, look at all the struggles you have, and take time to process them. And don't just see anger, don't just see sadness, like go deeper and look at why you react like that. Whenever you react like dramatically over something, or like you have a different reaction to something, like don't just ignore that. Like check engine light. It's a check engine light.
Yeah.
Process it.
Yeah.
And go through that and like figure out what the deeper root is as a single person, because that could really, really impact your marriage.
Yeah. That's great.
In the future.
I think that'll hopefully be even encouraging to women that listen too, you know?
Yeah.
Like to really like contend for your husband or your future husband in prayer. And it changed you, you know? You're like crying here.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the crazy thing is I didn't know that.
Right.
I didn't know that until we talked about it this last June. My birthday this last year, when I was sharing with her the things I've learned and all the things, like we were talking together, she shared that with me, and man, it just got me. I was just like that's crazy. But because of the fact that she believed what Scripture says and what Jesus says, like she trusted that.
Yeah.
And she went with that, and she just prayed without me knowing, without anybody knowing. Like she just prayed for me, and for her, it was even more impactful because of the fact that she gets to see an answered prayer.
Yeah.
Of just because our conversation, our conflict is way different. We learned our conflict ways. Like when we first got married, our conflict was very off. I'm very escalate, she's very escalate, and it just never went well, right? And so now I feel like our conflict has changed a lot, and that's just because of dealing with past hurts. That's literally all it took was just me dealing with the past hurts to have more patience, more understanding, and more love and care for my wife.
I want to ask you one last thing about dating, and then we'll wrap up. So you dated different women, even while you were in the church, it sounds like. Yeah. What was it about your wife that made you decide to commit? Okay, like this is who I want to be my wife. Okay, Proverbs 31, you said, you know, you're starting to see these things. She's praying for you now, which clearly that's very important, you know, to have a wife that is able to do that and will contend for you as a man. So what was it about your wife while you were still single that you were like, all right, I want to pursue her and I'm going to commit to her?
Yeah. So I think a lot of guys struggle with know who's the right person. Like I got to find my right person.
Right.
And that was that was a struggle for me. Like, what if I marry the wrong person? I don't like, it's because the divorce rate is so high. And so people are like, I don't want to be part of that. I don't want that to be my story. Yeah. And so you put this fear in yourself thinking that, well, we could get the wrong person or something like that. Right. And so I think the most important, so I changed my reasoning for wanting to marry something. I had to change the goal of what I'm looking for, right? Like there's this list that we want to fill she has to be perfect, right? Yeah. And so I'm not saying my wife is not perfect. She's perfect, more than perfect to me. But I was prioritizing certain things, and that should not be priority. Like my priority is, hey, is she following Christ? Like, is she really pursuing Christ? And what's her relationship with Christ look like? Like, what is it looking like? Because after, it says that, in Scripture, like, the fruits will be exposed. Like, their walk with Christ will be exposed later on. Like, the relationship with Christ will be exposed by the fruits of the Spirit, right? Yeah. And so... you'll know a tree by its fruit. Like that. Yeah. You'll know it's a tree by its fruit. So because of that, like when you date in a timely amount where you get to see that, get to live that out, right? I got to see her patience through our relationship. I got to see her love through our relationship, her care. And this is all care for people, but also the way she walked with Christ. And so that was that's what I admired the most, was like her pursuit of Christ. And then when it got to the point of, because we broke up one time, right? We broke up and it was me again. It's always me. I suck. And so I sucked at relationships just because I was afraid about something. And there was actually another relationship that ended before we ended. And I was like thinking maybe there's another chance. I was just so messed up. And in that time, right, of just trying to figure out dating. Yeah. And just afraid of committing to the wrong person.
It's like, it can be confusing. It can feel conflicting as men. So yeah. That's why I feel like having people come on and speak about it, to give wisdom, it will be helpful, hopefully.
Yeah. Hopefully it is. I mean, like I said, it took me sitting myself down and saying, you got to commit. And once you commit, you're committed. Like you're going to stick with that person. So I mentally got myself to that point, and I ignored all the other feelings and emotions of like, oh, what if this is wrong? I committed. I was like, I'm committed to this girl. Yeah. I'm going to marry this woman, and I'm going to do it. Like I'm going to stay true to this relationship. And so that's what I did. I literally mentally got myself prepared for that. Some guys might not be able to do that, but I did. I made that decision because it is a decision. It is a decision for you to make a commitment to stay with that girl. And so I'd say the way to get to that commitment is if she's pursuing Christ and it's clear, you see it. Yeah. Even through a year of dating, you get to see it the whole time. Yeah. And just commit. What are you waiting for? Commit. Yeah. Like, you're going to have hardships no matter what you think she's a perfect girl or not. Like, there's going to be hardships. There's always going to be something that you don't like, right? And any girl you date, same thing for girls. I don't know how they like guys, but because guys are the worst, like girls are the ones making a sacrifice. Like there's so much bad in guys, right? Yeah. Guys are making no sacrifice. It's like, hey bro, like there's good women, right? And like whoever you date, like just if she's pursuing Christ, do it. Like commit. Yeah. Just make a decision, commit. It's your decision.
Yeah. That's a lot of feedback I get from women is like, guys won't commit or guys won't ask me out. So yeah. Yep. Anything you'd want to just encourage single men around, just like, all right, being a man and committing, like how hard was it to actually do that, to make that decision?
Yeah, I would say this too, like when asking, I think a lot of fears are in guys, single men are asking girls out. Yeah. And then that's for like relationships, right? And then committing after dating, right? Or committing to a marriage, right? Yeah. So in asking girls out, like, I think that goes back to what I was saying, like, hey, find your confidence in Jesus. Find your, like, see what Jesus sees about you first and, like, know how Jesus sees you. Like, that should be your first priority. And then once you know and are confident in how Jesus sees you, then pursue a dating relationship. So, like, then you can have more courage and more strength to go up to any girl and to be like, hey, you want to go on a date with me? She says no. Thank you for your time. Like, thank you. I'm glad I asked.
I'm secure.
I already know where I find my secure and confidence, right? Yeah. So, hey, I'm good. And so that's the one thing for guys. Like, first, be married to Christ before you try to go get married with a girl. I think that's the other thing we talked about recently was like, I think that's a lot of thing guys can do while they're single is like, first go be married with Christ before you go try to marry your girl. And I think a lot of guys still learning what that even looks like. So I would encourage that as a single guy, like do that. Then that'll help you with your courage to date, asking a girl out or whatever. And then with committing, I already said it. Like you got it, bro. Just make the decision. Yeah. Like, and love the girl well. Like if you're 2 years in and she's been wanting to get married and you're still like back and forth, brother, you're not loving her well by keeping her confused about where you're at. And so you either need to communicate where you're at, like mentally or wherever you're at, or you need to pull the trigger and commit and just say, hey, I'm doing this. Like, we need to make this. And you need to trust Jesus through it. Right. And so don't keep a girl waiting. Like, that's so unloving of us as men, as leaders. Like, I hear of so many girls just like not knowing what's going on, or I'm ready to get married, but it's like guys just don't communicate well. And it's like girls need to know where you're at, and they need to understand how you're feeling. It's okay if you're not feeling good about it. Communicate that.
Yeah.
She just wants to know that you're not feeling good about it. And if you're afraid that she's going to think it's because of her, well, let her deal with with that reaction. Like, let her trust Jesus through that. If she's following Christ, let her trust Jesus through that, and let her find her confidence in Jesus. But you focus on communicating and being clear about where you're at, right? Don't worry about like how she's going to take it. Like, worry about you being a clear clear-minded leader.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Don't leave any confusion. Always provide clarity.
That's great. Yeah. I hope that encourages both men and women listening.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it will.
Yeah.
Let's wrap up. Last thing here.
We got a long time, dude. I'm sorry.
Just so much wisdom coming out, you know?
Oh, man. Just a lot of mess ups.
I know this is going to help a lot of people. So last thing, let's say someone's listening now for the whole episode and over an hour. What do you think, like, one thing you want someone to take away? All right, write this down, heading into the weekend. This one piece of advice you could specifically speak to single men. Yeah.
My specific advice that I really want to take or give, everybody to really hear is don't waste time and go and find healing. So we all have hurts. Like, let's just say that. Let's be honest with ourselves. We all have hurts from something, whether it's a small thing or a big thing. Somehow it's going to affect our future. I think I put that. The past behavior is the best indicator of our future behavior. So like, so anyways, and then also our past hurts like really indicate, how we treat other things in the future and how we react to future. So I would say don't waste your time right now as a single person, but use it to find healing from any hurt, any hurt you've caused, any hurt that's been caused to you. Like, don't waste time. Find healing, focus on that, and then learn who Jesus is. Like, a lot of people don't know how to even learn who Jesus is or follow Christ, right? And I think churches do good about, well, go get in the Bible, go pray, go, talk to Jesus, things. But I think we miss the point of like, well, where do we start? Where does a person that doesn't know Jesus start?
Yeah.
Where does a person that's trying to learn who Jesus is start? And so I'd say, well, learn first of all who Jesus is. Like, how are you going to follow someone if you don't even know who he is? Like, how am I going to commit to following someone if I don't know who he is, what he's done, what's going on? All I know is through other people. Like, the church tells me he died for me. Jesus died for me and rose again. But what is that? Like, how is that personal to me? Right?
Yeah.
Like, how do I know that he actually died for me? Like, how do I know that? So I would say first steps as a single man is like, that's still learning who Jesus is. Go find out who Jesus is. Like, go read Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Go read the Gospels. Like, go start there and learn who his character is, how he walked through life, how he handled situations, how he loved people, how he cared for people, how he loves you. Like, learn all that first, and then you'll know who to pray to, and then you'll know who to read about, and then you'll know how to walk closer to him. Like I think start first by knowing who he is first and how he sees you, and then learn how he sees you. Like, that's the biggest thing. Is like, guys hang on so much on their own confidence, on their own persona.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you right now, that will perish. Like, you're always gonna be let down by your own self-confidence. Like, you're never gonna be good enough. And so learn how to find confidence in Jesus first. And then from there, like, you can grow closer to Christ and really, find the truth in him. And so, I hope that's helpful to people, all over. And I'd say just don't waste your time as a single person.
Yeah.
Like, really pursue the Lord. And if you have questions on how to do that in other ways, like just
Yeah.
tell me, let me know.
Reach out to the podcast through Instagram.
Yeah.
The Single Man Podcast on Instagram. If you're not already following Instagram, reach out to Billy through Instagram. I'll put his Instagram in the description of the episode here. So, yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
Dude, if you made it this far, dude,
Leave a comment. Let us know.
I'll send you $5 if you made it this far. I'm just kidding. Watch it be too many people.
Love it.
If it's more than 10 people, okay, maybe not.
This is gonna blow up now. Oh man, well, so grateful for you, Billy. Thank you so much for coming on
Of
and
course.
being vulnerable. I think that's gonna help a lot of guys. Like speaking about pornography, anger, how to commit, what to look for. I think those are big topics that just guys don't speak much about. So appreciate your vulnerability coming on and sharing.
Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me out, man.
Yeah.
Like I said, this is I was like, man, there's gonna be a lot of segments. I don't even know what you talked about, right?
Yeah.
There's so many things to talk about, but
Right.
man, thanks for letting me share my story and
Just let the spirit lead.
yeah, for sure. So hopefully, I do pray that the Lord uses my story. I always pray that the Lord uses this story and my rebelliousness to help others not go through the same things and to be able to have a fruitful marriage. And so they don't have to go through the hardships that I went through in marriage, right? And so, yeah, that's what I always pray for in sharing my story.
Yeah.
So
Love it. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this week's episode. Thank you, Billy, for coming on. If you listened to this point, I'd love for you to let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and also to share it with a friend if you think that Billy's story would encourage a single man in your life, or a single woman potentially, or someone that's married that's trying to contend for their spouse right now. I think Billy's story could really encourage them. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your Friday. We'll be back next week with a new episode. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Single Man Podcast. If someone you know would benefit from this week's episode, I'd love for you to text them the link and invite them to listen. You never know how a simple invitation could change someone's life. We'll be back next Friday at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, with a new episode. Until then, check out the video version of the podcast on YouTube, and you can engage with us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.